Even in darkness, there is light. And this was a dark, dark season for the Chicago Bears fans, but there were bright spots. And these are a couple of them. Let's get it cracking. Yo, 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 no maniacs, super no maniacs, and all in between. Welcome to another edition of Feed the Bears, man. Make sure you hit that like button, hit the subscribe if you're new to the channel. We would appreciate your support 110%. But let's get right on into this, man. I think, one of the things that I did this offseason, I did it the past couple of off seasons, is me, and this is just me taking pride in being a podcaster and trying to cover the team. One of the things, just to do due diligence, I went to as soon as the offseason was over, I started reviewing the roster. And for this simple fact, if you're going to produce content in my eyes, to me, a good way to go about doing it and being accurate about it when you're doing, off-season fantasy mode, when you're signing guys to the roster and you're cutting guys, and then you go into mock draft, when you get into that mode to be totally accurate about what you're doing and what you're saying, you probably should review the roster and see exactly what you have on the board to begin with, inside house Hall. And especially when you're having a coaching change, when you're having a regime change, it's going to be all kinds of different coaches that are going to come in here. You're trying to find out what schemes they're going to be running. Does this player fit? Does that player fit? All that stuff is part of due diligence when you want to try to be as accurate as you can be. So I believe that we've done a good job over here to do that. And so part of that process, talking about that darkness and finding the bright spots, these two guys you see on the screen right here are defensive tackle Jonathan Ford and defensive end Daniel Hardy. So let's talk about them one at a time. Daniel Hardy, defensive end out of Montana State. Probably, I think everybody would agree that that kid was by far and away the runaway favorite of last year's preseason. I would just say that. He flashed and flashed and flashed and kept on flashing the entire preseason. And it continued once he got into regular season. Whenever he got some chances to get himself on the field, man, you constantly saw it. I'm looking at the film, and it was clear and obvious. A couple of these bright spots, and Daniel Hardy was definitely one of them. Relentless motor. I mean, and it wasn't just on defense. He made sure that he stood out on special teams too. I mean, he really did himself some favors. So I'm imagining that when these coaches came inside the building and they did their due diligence to look at the film and see, what kind of talent do we have on this team and who could fit in what we're doing moving forward. I'm sure it took them a minute to really go over all the tape that we had. And these guys, I'm telling you, really, really stuck out. Daniel Hardy is, I think, the more opportunity given to him, the more and more he shines. Because that relentless pursuit and that effort, the grit and toughness that he plays with is absolutely, I mean, it's outstanding when you're looking at it on tape. When you're isolating this film, as much as you can get your hands on to look at those reps, man, he was a monster every time he got on the field. And so what they've done now, let me get into the contract situation with them. This is something I just learned over the last 24 to 48 hours. I never really knew what an exclusive rights free agent was until I had to go look it up and get the definition. So the way I understand it is you tender an expiring contract from a player like these two on the screen. And what that does is that they don't have any right to go out and negotiate, with another team. So basically, whatever they signed them to, that's what they're getting. The only options they have at this point, either one of them, is to not play. That is it. And I don't think either one of them are in position to say no to the team. They're going to play. They're going to at least get to camp and go through camp, and we'll see what happens from there. But I think both of them are really strong pieces. Now, let me get to defensive tackle Jonathan Ford and his story. Now, he's one that I've probably been paying attention to a little bit longer because when he was at Miami, I had my eyes on him. And he ended up in the hands of Green Bay as a UDFA. He might have got drafted in the 7th round. I'm not sure, but I think he landed there as a UDFA. And if you know anything about Green Bay and their roster, they've got a pretty talented defensive front. And he had a hard time getting on the field. I don't think he got on the field at all the entire time he was at Green Bay, not in a regular season anyway. I think he was just simply on the practice squad. And I don't want people to get confused what I'm saying here. Uber talented football player, strong as an ox, he just landed in a place that really didn't provide him an opportunity to get on the field. So what happened? It became clear and obvious. And let me say this to back up a little bit, because I can remember, and anybody that's been following the Nomad Network for a while, I can remember in the preseason as they were assembling this roster, I kept on pointing out on different shows to the guys doing the shows with us that we got a weakness on this team. We didn't get enough beef up front, because it was clear to see, looking at the depth of the roster, that after Andrew Billings, there wasn't really a qualified big boy to back him up. And I was just like, I'm trying not to be overly critical about the situation, but here we were going into the season. I'm trying to be, bright about the whole thing, but it became clear to me. It wasn't so obvious right away, but the minute Andrew Billings went down, you can see the deficiency. You can see it. And so we were playing with all these undersized D tackles. We had some really talented D tackles, but they were light, and teams would just run right through them. And so I just kept pounding the table. Me and Kev got into a couple of back and forths about it. It was funny. But later on, I kept saying we need to go out on some practice squad and find some big boy for no other reason than to try to help plug up this run game. So it took until later on in the season. Right after me and Kev had the back and forth, seemed like about a week later, they pick up Jonathan Ford off of the Green Bay Packers practice squad. And when that went down, it was a perfect situation for him, because once he signed here, I think they put him on the field immediately. Like that next Sunday, they put him on the field. And so he got in, and right away you could see the difference. Right away. Was the tape perfect? No, I can't say that. But it was really, for somebody who just came from one system, came into another, getting thrust on the field that exact same Sunday, I thought it was impressive. And he got better and better throughout the season. But it was clear to me he did not lack talent. It wasn't the lack of talent that kept him off the field. It was the abundance of talent in Green Bay that kept him off the field. But this turned out to be the perfect situation for him. He got a chance to get some reps on tape, so that now that these coaches came in here and got to see what he's made of, they thought enough of him to give him this tender, and they wanted to lock him up. And I thought that was very bright, because these two guys were clearly to me the guys that really, really stuck out at the very bottom end of this roster. And I just want to say, congratulations to those guys. Well, I don't know how they feel about that kind of contract, but I'm just glad to know that those guys are going to be back in the Chicago Bears uniform. I think they got hella upside to them. I believed in them the minute we got them, whether it was Daniel Hardy or Jonathan Ford. Both, especially Jonathan Ford, I just knew a little bit more about him, and I knew what he can bring to the table. And so I'm just really looking forward to seeing those guys really ascend on this roster. And I just thought for a second, let me jump in here and talk about that, because I think, some of these guys on the lower end of the roster ain't the most popular thing to talk about, but every one of those football players on that team, I think, has high potential. And it's worth talking about them, especially these two, man. You really, if you took the time to look at it on film, you will really see how much these guys really stuck out, man. So I was just happy when I heard about it. Can't wait to see these guys get going in preseason when we're in training camp, however that works out. But those guys are bright spots on this roster. I just wanted to jump in here and tell you guys that, and say before I get out of here, thank you guys for being here. Remind you one more time, hit that like button, share this content with your people, and make sure you hit that subscribe button if you're not already subscribed to the channel. We would really appreciate your support moving forward. With that being said, I want to leave you guys with these famous words. If you can think it and you can see it, there's no reason in the world why you cannot absolutely manifest it. Do not, and I repeat, do not be a prisoner of your own mind. But with that being said, I am